exactly, even a year in. Thank you very much for joining us today, Steve. Really appreciate it. We've got a few people in watching now, which is great. So, I mean, I suppose you might as well give yourself an introduction. What you know more about yourself than I do, so I'll let you crack on.
Okay, well, should I just start sharing the slides? I can talk a little bit about it on there.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. And just to anybody listening, you can pop any questions in the chat box or in the Q&A function. So do feel free to do that.
Can you see that clearly?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Perfect. Okay. So yeah, a little bit about me. My name is Thebe. My full name is Navratnam Parthiban. I'm a vet, and I've been in clinical practice, in industry, and I was a livestock lecturer at another university for a while. And I'm currently working for Phibro Animal Health, who are the 7th biggest animal health company in the world, who are based in the US, and my job is to manage the UK operation. So I do on-farm consultancy, and my main species are dairy and some sheep work as well. And in fact, we're doing a study with Harper Adams with a sheep product, which will hopefully be launched later this year if things go well. So that's a bit about me. Yeah, we're in lots of, we do research in the US and Israel, and we've just opened a new vaccine factory in Sligo in Ireland as well. So we're doing a lot of work in Ireland with that. So today I'm going to talk about preventative strategies to improve farm animal health. So again, you know, farm animal health is an important thing to support, and really, rather than treatment, prevention is more important. And I'm going to go through a few different things today. And yeah, if you do have any questions, please ask me at the end. And I'm not going to talk about everything out there, but it's really to give some thoughts on this topic and really help you sort of work your way on where to do some more research or where you can find out more information, really. So I want to talk about why animal health is important. Where do I start? Where would you start if you were working in livestock, whether you're on farm or working in one of the allied industries? Where could you start thinking about animal health? And then I'm going to go through some of the technologies out there. And rather than go through each technology and how it works, it's going to be more about how much use is this technology, where would it fit in, and what are some of the benefits and some of the barriers with some of the technology out there. And again, there's probably more technology than I'm aware of. So it's one of those that, you know, the more research you do, the more you'll find out. And finally, sort of a few questions about the future and what sort of preventative strategies are there that we're probably talking about that's in the news at the moment, and you know, where could that go? So it's probably going to take about half an hour or so, and then yeah, there should be plenty of time. So animal health, what is animal health? And I think people think about disease when they think about health, but what health involves is a few other things as well. So we've got to think about the physical, being the animal's anatomy, physiology, metabolism, but also the mental well-being of an animal. And you know that cows and sheep are herd animals. Also, we remember, you know, these animals do have natural behaviors that we need to try and support as well. So any way that we farm them, and again, when we farm animals, we're taking away some of their freedoms. They can never be 100% free, but then how do we support that mental well-being as well? And social. So again, I've herd animals, there is a hierarchy. There is a herd size, for example, in cows. So again, we need to sort of support that so that cows, you know, when they form a social, a stable social group, then mentally they feel a lot better. So we've got to try and maintain that. And how do we do that? Well-being is important. So we talk about animal health, and we always put the word welfare next to it. And welfare just means well-being. So it's important that the animal has good welfare. So it does the things that we want to do that I'll talk about in a minute. And animal health is part of that. And it's more of what I'll be talking about today. But animal health is part of a bigger subject of welfare. So I put these two pictures there, and I'm sorry, but a lot of my talk is today going to be about dairy cows, just because that's what I talk about. But again, it can be applied to a lot of other animals. But if we see these two pictures here, we've got some cows in a field grazing grass, and we've got cows in a shed eating some silage and some total mixed ration. And the first thing is, which is a better system? And I'll leave that, just give you 20 seconds to think about that. Which is a better system? Is it better to keep cows on that grass eating outdoors, or is it better to keep cows in a shed feeding the TMR? So when you're thinking about this, think about, why do you think that one system is better than another system? Why is it better to keep cows in a shed that way, or why is it better to keep cows in a field? And the third thing is, are there advantages and disadvantages to both systems? So actually, are there issues of keeping cows on fields? And vice versa, are there issues of keeping cows in sheds? But are there benefits? And again, there is no ideal system. So again, there are negatives to keeping cows in fields, like there are negatives to keeping cows in sheds. And then the final thing really, before I move on, is that we've got to remember that these cows are being bred for a certain way. These are not wild buffalo or bison. So in the process of farming, what we've done is we've taken animals that had a wild genotype, and we've bred them to have characteristics that we want in a farmed animal. So for example, for pigs, we've domesticated pigs, and we're growing them to get probably better lean quality, better growth rates, better immunity, better carcass muscle to bone ratios, for example. The same with the dairy cow, for example. She's not going to be, a beef cow and a dairy cow are two very different types of cows. Whereas when we feed both of them a kilo of food, the dairy cow is going to convert a lot of that into milk. A beef cow is going to convert a lot of that into muscle. So again, we've bred cows for a certain purpose. So again, when we talk about farmed animals and we talk about health and physical, mental and social well-being, we've got to remember that these animals have got a different way of being bred, and therefore they might have a different way of thinking about things as well. But again, we've got to think about both systems, and we've got to think about, well, which is better and why. So I'm going to focus on livestock health, but what does good livestock health mean? And we've got to understand this subject. So does it mean that it's better production? So a healthy animal will produce more. So if it's a beef animal, will it grow better? If it's a milking animal, will it produce more milk? And is that the factor that we look for? So good production equals good health. That could be one factor that we work on. Is the factor efficiency? So an animal that's well, will it eat food, and because it's well, will convert that food into growth, for example? So if we've got a young calf or piglet or chick, and it grows at a certain growth rate that we want, does that mean that the animal's healthy? And we do know that animals that aren't healthy will not be as efficient in converting food. And some of that food will be therefore used to fight off disease, to regulate body metabolism, and therefore will not go into growth. So we could look at as efficiency as meaning, an efficient animal means good livestock health. And again, when we think about farmed animals, food is probably the biggest expense for a farmer. So if a farmer's going to invest in food, if they can convert that into a production characteristic, then that's efficiency, that in that way, for example. That could be one factor that we do think about. Could it be longevity, especially for breeding animals? So if we've got sows, or if we've got cows, dairy cows or beef cows, suckler cows, if we've got a cow that lasts 5 years in a dairy system, for example, compared to another system where the cows last 2.5 years, does that mean that we've got better health in the cows that lasted 5 years? And one of those will mean that the cow will have more piglets. If it's a cow, it'll have more calves. If it's a pig, it'll have more piglets. And is that a factor on good livestock health? And again, it does mean efficiency as well. The more offspring an animal can have in its life, the more efficient it becomes overall in its lifespan. Doesn't mean profitability. So profitability is important in farming, because again, farming does need that. It is a business, and we need to try and develop enterprises that are profitable. So if an animal has good health, does that mean that A, it lives longer and is more efficient, but also less antibiotic use, and so therefore we're saving costs on that. Also, if an animal isn't ill, that it doesn't have these growth stagnations. Every time an animal's ill, it'll stop growth or it'll stop production at some point. But if we don't have these periods where an animal is ill, it will just, you know, keep on growing or producing, and therefore we're going to hopefully overall be more profitable. Less loss, less death. So again, profitability could be a factor that we say, well, if a farm's more profitable, does that mean the animals are got higher livestock health? I'm not saying any of these are correct or incorrect, but it's different ways to think about, well, how do we measure good livestock health on a farm? Good livestock health is essential, because we've got to think about what the purpose of these animals are. At the end of the day, they're food. So it's important that we have good livestock health, therefore the food that we feed for humans or to other animals is safe. We're not transmitting diseases, okay? And you know, the diseases we worry about, especially zoonotic diseases. So these are diseases that can cross from animals to humans. So again, you know, food safety is really important. So therefore, you know, to maintain that, does good livestock health mean that the food that we get is safe? And a simple way could be, another way could be looking at milk quality, you know, cell count in milk. You know, if we've got a low cell count, it's safer, it'll store longer, but also it means that we'll have to look after the cow better. So is that an indicator of good livestock health? And good livestock health means employment as well. So there are a huge number of people employed in the livestock sector, and good health of animals means that people can stay employed in the industry thrives, and carries on. And again, if we've got issues with livestock health, you know, for example, you know, if a farm keeps suffering from TB or an issue like that, you know, does the farm have to close down eventually because they can't get on top of it? Whereas a farm that's thriving, which has got good livestock health, is able to be profitable, be able to employ people, and therefore we keep that going. So does that good livestock health mean that we get better employment in the sector, more people wanting to be part of the sector and make the sector thrive? So there's lots of different ways of looking at good livestock health, and again, different farmers will have different motivations on why they want to maintain good livestock health. I think fundamentally, good livestock health is important because, again, as livestock keepers or owners or people who work in the industry, it's important that we care for the animals that we look after, and it should just be a moral duty to care for animals, to make sure that they are healthy, and we follow the Animal Welfare Act. But again, by looking after animals well, we get these benefits that we can see there, and that could also be a motivator to make sure that you try and motivate yourself to do better than before. So there are positives for good livestock health. So what can we do to measure good livestock health? You know, you could say to yourself, well, is this farm healthier than another farm? And there are lots of different ways we can do that. We can look at the clinical signs. You know, we can measure how many cows are coughing, how many pigs are lame or have got bruises. You know, how many deaths in chickens do we get, or how many bad eyes do we get in chickens? So we can look at clinical signs, we can add them up, and we can say, well, you know, this is our starting position. What we want to do is we want to reduce this, and therefore work on that. And by reducing that, we can say, well, we've improved health that way. Okay. We can look at body temperatures and different things like that. So that could be a way of measuring good health. We can look at production characteristics. So again, is a farmer who's producing 35 litres, you know, basically the cow is able to produce that 35 litres because a farmer is looking after that cow really well. Because a cow who's not very well will not produce 35 litres. Or a farmer who's achieving, you know, 12, 14 piglets, every farrowing, again, is that a sign of good health? You know, those pigs are able to farrow that many piglets, and the farmer's able to get that from every crop. Efficiency, again, you know, for every kilo that the farmer feeds, if the farmer's getting a certain growth rate out of that, does that indicate that the farmer is achieving a good health in his or her animals, which is important. Longevity, again, we talk about the systems in the US where cows on average last 1.5 lactations. In the UK, we're hitting 3 lactations, 2.5, 3 lactations. Is that a sign that we are doing something better, or doing something that's, you know, more important for the animals to last that long? And again, you know, the first 2 years before a cow has her first calf, she's costing the farmer money. So therefore, only when she starts to produce milk, every year that she does, she's earning money. So the longer she lives and the more lactation she goes through, the more money that the farmer can therefore receive and break even and then make a profit. So longevity might be an important one to look at. Profitability, again, you know, we don't want farming systems where we're losing money. So again, if the farmer is able to make money from a system, you know, at minimum break even, but better if you make money, again, you know, is that a sign that the farmer is looking after the animals better, and therefore is able to become profitable? You know, that could be a factor. I'm not saying it is or isn't. It could be a factor to look at. And again, safety records. You know, is the produce going to market having no problems? Is the farmer winning awards for it? Is the farmer selling the milk and getting a premium because it's such a low cell count, for example? You know, these are ways that maybe that could indicate, well, if the farmer's able to do that, is the farmer doing something right on their farm? And employment, again, a farmer that's got employees that are happy to work there, that are proud to work there, that happy to show off what they are doing, is that a sign that they are doing the right thing? Is, you know, it could mean that that's what good health is supporting on those farms. So there's a couple of there are a couple of things there about what we need to look for when we want to have good health, and what's important, because again, you know, if we can get health correct, then it's going to be better for the animal, but better for what comes out afterwards as well, and better for the farm overall. Animal health is really, really important, and it's fundamental in this country and around the world, and it's something that we're really, really proud of. So we're really proud about animal welfare in this country and our farmed animal welfare, and animal health is a big component of that. So you know, farmers working with allied industries, so vets and geneticists and technicians, and the food industry, you know, working to promote animal health. But it's part of a bigger picture, and One Health is becoming bigger and bigger, because we've got to remember that diseases can spread between animals to humans, which is a big worry. It's a big threat, and you know, we've had outbreaks in the past which have worried us. So really we shouldn't hold animal health separately from human health. There's a lot that we can learn together, and there's a lot that, you know, one can inform the other. And again, you know, animal health and human health also has an impact on the environment. This is from the British Veterinary Association, and it's all about the One Health approach, and it's about how does animal health, human health, and environmental health interconnect and work together. And what you'll find is even with the UN and the bigger organisations, there is more collaboration between different organisations when we talk about animal health and preventing the outbreak of disease or issues that way. So it's very, very important to put that into perspective. And if we think about in diseases in animals, and if you think about the notifiable diseases in animals, you know, things like TB and Salmonella, the risk is because it can potentially become a zoonosis and get into the human population, and hence why we need to make sure that we are controlling. Not only can it devastate animals and cause issues, but the risk is it could go into the human population as well. So again, there's always that synergy of working together. So yeah, I mentioned welfare is essential, and welfare is the overarching topic, and then what we have is animal health and behaviour and mental states and things like that, which all feed into welfare. So welfare is important, and welfare just means well-being. So it means that the physical and mental well-being of an animal is important. And actually, just an animal being healthy is not just enough, but also mentally they have to be well. And if they've got both, they're going to do better. They're going to live longer, produce better, be healthier, and overall it's going to be better for the animal. So welfare is important. And we've got to think about the whole animal, and not just the animal itself, but its environment. So we've got to think about ourselves. How do we work around animals? What do we use to move animals? How do we, talk to animals to communicate with them? How do we enter without, are we quite rash when we walk in? Do we walk in slowly? Do we use, what sort of tools do we use? What are the noises around? So think about how we work around animals. Do we use things like gates properly to move animals, to make sure that we're not scaring them or stressing them? Okay. How do we house animals or manage their environment? Again, there's no perfect answer to this, but again, if we can try and manage what their natural behaviors are like, and again, it's difficult in the house sometimes, but what can we do to make that better? So again, thinking about the bedding, the ventilation, the light, the noises, the group size, and things like that. How do we house animals, and is it appropriate for the type of animal we've got and the species of animal? How do we group animals? So again, are we mixing lots of young animals and older animals together? Are we keeping groups stable? Are we mixing quite regularly? Have we got animals from lots of different places all coming together? So again, we've got to think about animals, and again, they like to form stable groups, and are we doing that? Management routines. So there are periods in an animal's life that are very stressful, and no matter how good we try and make it, it is stressful. So when an animal gives birth, that's always a stressful period. Weaning, that's quite a stressful period. Moving animals are stressful, and then things like the process of when we do vaccinations, or when we need to change feed, or if we've got different people coming in. These are all different periods of their life when they can cause stress. So we've got to think about their management routines, and how can we minimize any issues there. And are we providing any enrichment? So we know that pigs like to forage, for example. And again, do we provide that? Are we doing anything to help that along? And again, enrichment really helps with mental well-being in animals, and which means that if they are mentally fit, then it helps their physical fitness, which then feeds into the rest of animal health and well-being. So today I'm going to focus on disease. So I know it's been quite big, but we're coming down towards disease and what we can do about disease. So disease is an expensive thing. Okay, treating a disease is expensive financially, but also the cost of, if an animal's ill, it'll stop or slow down in whatever it's doing, whether it's producing milk, growing, eating, and that's the problem with disease. It slows things down, and so that's a period of time when animals become less efficient. The cost of treatment is also expensive, and especially at a time when we're trying to reduce antibiotic usage, disease is a reason why we use antibiotics, and so again it costs money. And then if disease is bad enough, then it can kill an animal. And again, with antibiotic resistance, we want to try and minimize the use of antibiotics, but again, antibiotics have to be used if there is a bacterial infection that needs to be controlled. So we can't stop antibiotics, but we need to use them more proficiently. And that's to reduce the amount of antibiotic resistance. And the risk is antibiotic resistance getting into the human population. So we need to try and control that. The other risk with disease is it can become chronic and then untreatable, and therefore that's the end of the life for the animal. And the risk is that disease can spread from animal to animal or from animal to human. And there's a little stat there that in the US, livestock producers lose 21 billion to animal diseases each year. So prevention is key, and that's what we need to aim for when we're looking at animals and disease. Disease, if you think about preventing disease, you've got to think about, well, how does disease work? What do we need for a disease in an animal? And we need three things for a disease to really kick in. We need the pathogen, the actual thing that causes the disease. So it could be the TB bacterium. It could be the pneumonia, the Pasteurella bacteria. It could be the coccidia, the oocytes coccidia. It could be any of those things. So that's the pathogen that causes a problem. But on its own, on a piece of concrete, it's not going to cause any problem. What it also needs is it needs to get into the host. So, for example, that TB molecule has to get inside a cow and get to the lungs, for it to start to cause its problem. So we need a host and we need the pathogen. But again, we also need the right environment. So again, a lot of pathogens are living beings. They need warmth, they need moisture. So again, if we have a completely dry shed, okay, with lots of ventilation going through, there's going to be loads of Pasteurella around. There might be some Pasteurella in the nose of the cow, but it's not the right sort of environment for it to flourish sometimes. So if the environment becomes very hot or damp, then that's going to be a really great breeding ground for this Pasteurella to really get hold of that host and cause further problems. Again, the host, if the host is healthy, it can probably fight off a lot of disease. If the host starts to have an immune problem, has another infection, then that can bring down the immune system and cause that pathogen to cause problems. So, for a disease to happen, you need the pathogen, you need the host, you need the environment. And therefore, when we think about prevention, it's about working on one of these three things. What can we do about these three things to prevent a disease? Do we get rid of the pathogen? Do we support the host? Do we change the environment? And if we do that, we can reduce disease. So the first step is yourself. You being on farm, either the livestock, the farmer, the assistant, or an allied industry. What can you do? What can you do about preventing disease? And I think it all starts about yourself. And it's with any problem. First got to be aware that this is a problem. Disease is a problem. It's a costly problem in lots of different ways. What can I do about it? And the next stage is to educate yourself about it. So education, you've got lots of different senses. You've got eyes, ears, you've got a mouth, you've got touch. So what you can do is use all those different ways of learning. Try and talk to people about disease. Try and talk to people about management. Read up about it. Watch webinars or programs about it. Listen to talks about it. Listen to other people about it. Go and visit farms and physically, look at different treatments and preventatives and things like that. And I think really immerse yourself in the industry. So becoming self-aware and educating yourself is the first thing, and not being afraid to ask questions, because that's really, really important. And even, I've been at it for nearly 12-13 years as a vet, and I still have lots of questions, and I'm still always trying to find answers. And every farmer or vets or somebody I talk to, I'm always learning something new. So it's never ending, and there's always more and more research out there and more ideas. And so it's an interesting side, but and I think it's always good to be aware of these things. So seek out help, seek out advice, but always keep your ears open, eyes open, and talk to people. So really engage that way. We talked about management, and we talked, and that is really important. And when I talk about management, thinking about the behavioural, the physical, the mental, and also I talked about disease needing the host, the pathogen, and the environment. So if we think about the pathogen and the environment, the thing about both of these, both the shed and outdoors, is there are pathogens everywhere, and there is the environment in both of those. And actually, when you think about controlling disease, both of them are good and both of them are bad in different ways. So, for example, the cow on the field, the cow is able to graze, which is a nice natural behavior. Cows need to be eating a lot of fiber, so it's good nutrition as long as the grass is good quality. Cows, good space, fresh air, the ventilation's brilliant. And if it's soft ground, that's going to be good for their feet as well. So the outdoor environment is brilliant in many ways for that. But then imagine if we had triple the amount of cows that we could see in that picture on the field, in that same field. Again, we're going to start to have overcrowding in the field. Okay, we're going to have a build up of manure. Again, if the grass is poor quality, then we're going to have nutrition issues. Let's say there are certain weeds growing in there that are bad, then again, that could be a nutritional issue as well. Or if there's deficiencies in the soils, then the cows can develop nutritional deficiencies that way. If you think about manure, and you think about gut parasites, that's a way that gut parasites can spread from cow to cow is through manure. So again, you know, if that field is overstocked, or let's say it was flooded in any ways, and that could be a way that you know, these gut parasites can spread. So there are positives and there are negatives, and it all depends on how you manage that outdoor system. If we think about the indoor system there, well, the good thing is we can feed them. You know, we can regulate what feed we feed them. We can feed them a mixed ration and add in nutrients that way, and we can ensure that each cow gets fed. We can clean the muck up regularly, so therefore they're not sitting in their own muck. We can provide them with cubicles, so they all have their individual places to lie down, and cows need to lie down to ruminate, so we can do that. We can put windows in the sides, so they have light, and we can put fans in there for ventilation. So they're positives, but there are negatives as well. So, you know, the ventilation we can try and improve the ventilation, but can it ever be as good as being outdoors? Probably not. So respiratory disease is going to be a risk. Okay. The reliance is that we clean out the muck regularly, that we have scrapers or somebody scrapes it. Again, you know, there are sheds where maybe that doesn't happen, and so the muck can build up indoors. We might have too many cows in there, so therefore not all of them, some of them will be bullied and won't come out to eat. So maybe that some of them will suffer from nutritional issues. Not that the food is poor quality, but the cows aren't able to eat on it. Heat stress, for example. Again, you know, even in the best made sheds, you can get heat stress, and cows only need to be at 22 degrees or more to start to suffer heat stress. So again, you know, I've been to sheds where they've got some brilliant fans and brilliant outlets and inlets, but the cows are still bunching in areas which can indicate heat stress as well. So, you know, again, we can get issues that way. So there are good, but again, we can see the cows clearly in one area. So there are positives and negatives with these two systems, and again, it depends on what you want to do. So again, with the indoor system, maybe I want to get a really high milk production, whereas in the outdoor system, milk production can be lower, but I want to get longevity in those cows. So again, it depends on what you want to get to, but then both of them could be classed as healthy if we think about it, not strictly talking about it. But it's about working on what sort of management system we're trying to get to prevent disease in that way, which maintains health. Stress is really, really important. And you know, recently I went to a farmer and we were talking about stress, and he said, my cows, you know, don't suffer stress. I give them this and I do this, and you know, they're free to do this and this. And I said, well, every time a cow calves, that's a stressful point in its life. Every time a cow, a heifer has to be milked for the first time or taken through the parlour, that's a stressful point in its life. You know, weaning, and we talked about different incidences, and the farmer then sort of start to understand, well, actually, these are things that, you know, you can do as much as you can, but they are going to be stressful for the cow. So we've got to think about, well, you know, we've got to understand that and try and minimize it as much as we can. We can't eliminate it, we'll try and minimize it as much as we can. But the problem with stress is it does impact immunity. So stress releases a hormone called cortisol, and cortisol can interact with the immune system and reduce it. And for example, you know, we see a lot of diseases after calving, for example, you know, mastitises and metritis and ketosis, and a lot of that is to do with immunity as well, and the impact of stress at that period. So there are stressful events we can't get rid of, but we can try and minimize. So transport, for example, you know, we have to transport animals, but it's the way we do that. You know, are we using the right type of vehicles to do that? Are we moving animals in a quiet, orderly fashion? Are we well prepared with the right gates and the right flooring so they don't slip? And again, there are codes of conduct as well with transport of animals, for example. So again, abiding to that as a minimum, but seeing if we can do more. Heat is a big one. So in this country, the number of hot days are getting more, and heat stress is becoming a problem in the UK. And there's more and more work about that, more and more papers published on that. So again, we need to start, we imagine places like Israel, the US, the Middle East is places where there are heat stressed animals. And in my case, dairy cows, but even in the UK, we can suffer from heat stress. And I've seen heat stress in southwest Scotland as well, extreme heat stress. So again, the farmer suspected something else, and it came back as heat stress, and working on that was different. But again, in the southwest and southeast of England, it's going to be bigger and bigger. And lambing or calving or farrowing, every time an animal does that, that is a point in its life where it's going to be suffering stress. So whatever we can do to minimize that is going to support immunity, and then a high immunity is going to be able to fight off disease better and support animal health. So thinking about ways of doing that is really, really important. Fundamentals of biosecurity. So again, when I talked about the diagram, host, environment and pathogen, how do we prevent the pathogen getting onto the farm, and how do we prevent it spreading among the farm? So thinking about bringing in animals, any transport coming in, rodents, people, even the food, and especially in pig units where these high biosecure pig units, they're a really good example of how they measure biosecurity, both internal and external, and how they create measures to prevent issues arising. So again, I would say if you want to look at a really good way of how to talk about biosecurity and managing biosecurity, if you look at pigs or chickens, because they're both two species that are, especially in intensive units where biosecurity is fundamental, because animals are treated as a herd rather than an individual when it comes to disease and treatment. There's some really good principles there about how to regulate and manage biosecurity. One thing that's really growing now is data and sensor technology. So we need to know there's a problem before it happens. There's no point, when an animal shows clinical signs, normally that means that it's the tip of the iceberg. And there are animals not showing clinical signs but are starting to suffer. And that'd be an example of hypercalcemia in cows or ketosis or anything like that. So if we start to see one problem, it's a worry because there might be a lot more animals. So what we want to do is we want to be able to catch animals before we start to see problems. And data and sensor technologies are important. So sensors can be everywhere. They can be on the ankles of animals, on their ears, things that ruminants can swallow, and they sit in the rumen, a bolus. And they can be things, tags that can be put in, microchips that can be put in. And this is an area that's really growing. And I think it's really, really good, because actually what it means is then the information can then be fed to either a computer or a phone, and then the farmer or the vet or the reproduction specialist can then look at the data and see if there's any issues occurring early, and therefore try and do something before it becomes a problem. And I think it is the way forward. It is the things that are happening. The worry about data is I think we're in a bit of a data overload at the moment. There's so much data out there, and a lot of companies will be pushing data to farmers, saying, look, use this data, buy this, and you get this data. But a lot of people don't use that data. And I think there's a lot of wasted data out there at the moment. It's a huge commodity, and it's very, very valuable. But I think we're still learning on what to do with the data, what the data means and what we can do with it. So at the moment, very, very little amount of that data is actually usable. But I think as time goes on, we're going to be able to learn more and more about how to use data better. It is important, and data on production, data on disease, data on antibiotic usage, it's all important. The minimum use of data is in herd health plans at the moment. So as a minimum herd health plan, red tractor plan, you need to put some data. For example, I don't know how many lambs you had in a period, or how much milk the cow is producing. But the next stage is then what the milk companies want, or what the buyers want, and then the next stage is what you're going to do about it and how you're going to use it to improve efficiency on your farm and the health on your farm. So there's lots of different levels to using data, but again, it's a growing science. And also, again, farmers need to understand what else can that data mean. For the farmer, financially, what does that mean? So we talk about better animal health, but Breeder are a company who are talk about data and try and promote farmers collecting data, and they have an app that you can download, And what they've created now is a way that if a farmer collects the data for the lifetime of that animal, then the farmer can log it, can be accredited for it, and therefore when they sell these animals get a premium because they've got the data. And they're trying to create a market for these premium animals that have a lifetime data. So again, there are schemes now to make the data profitable for the farmer. So not only is it a measure, and again, with that data, as a buyer, you have the reassurance of what the animal's been through, and it does give an indication of the health of that animal over that period. So it's assurance for the buyer, but it's assurance for the farmer. And again, it means that the animal is being watched, is being followed, and therefore any issues can be dealt with quickly. I don't know if you're aware, but this is an example of another data thing out there. It's a bolus that that a cow swallows. It sits in the rumen and it can spit out a load of data. So here's some examples. There's you can spit out rumination, temperatures, body temperatures, how much it's been moving. Loads of data that comes out. Again, you can farmers can read this, can spot issues, and try and change that. So that's an example of something that's producing data. Vaccines are important. So vaccines use the acquired immunity. So the animal learns what the problem is, produces immune cells, so that if the real infection does enter the animal, it's able to fight it quickly. And we're probably quite aware of how vaccines work with with all the information about the COVID vaccine recently. So vaccines are out there, but vaccines are only as good as the animal they're put in and in the environment the animal lives in. So the animal is in poor health in the first place, or the animal's in a poor environment, vaccines don't work. So you got to get the basics right, the vaccines work well. There are other things that came on the market and went or have come on the market. So this is an example of something that boosts the immune system. So you inject this, it boosts the white blood cells, and therefore it was meant to be a way of reducing mastitis and other diseases in dairy cows. Unfortunately, the cost benefits weren't there with this product. It was a brilliant product, but it was very difficult to show the cost benefits, and so now it's off the market. But the plan is to bring it back onto the market once they work on that marketing model much better. But there's one product that was fed for cows injection. Another one's the ketone boluses. So these are boluses that the cow swallows. It's a type of antibiotic, and what it does is it kills off the gram-positive bacteria in the rumen and promotes gram-negative bacteria in the rumen. And gram-negative bacteria produce more propionic acid, which produces glucose in the blood, so animals don't suffer from energy deficits. So it's a brilliant thing for dairy cows. The problem is it is an antibiotic, but it's not classed, as something with antibiotic resistance at the moment. So farmers put this down the throat, it sits in the rumen, and it means that the animals don't go through negative energy balance, which ketone boluses. So a few more things. Automation is brilliant. Robots are really good, and the reason is because they provide consistency. So again, every animal will get a similar way of being treated. It can provide data, and it can provide a minimum. So, a minimum of what, of cleaning the teats, a minimum of how much it feeds, of how it takes the milk. And so they are very good. But again, they're only as good as how well they're maintained. So again, these things need to be well maintained. They can have issues as well. So again, they're not the magic bullet. So there are limitations, but it does provide a standard. Again, we've got to remember that getting the basics right is always key. If you can pre or post dip a teat properly with the right concentration of solution, then you're going to do a good enough job, making sure the teats are clean. So making sure the basics are correct, blameless, making sure that animals are foot dipped regularly with the right type of concentration, making sure all 4 feet are there. So I think robots and automation is a good thing, but again, it doesn't mean that without that you can't have healthy animals and prevent disease. If you get the basics right, then they can be right. But robots can be a good thing as well. But again, with robots, there is a financial implication as well, and they can help prevent disease. Nutrition is important, and what do we get out of nutrition? So there are a number of different things what we want from nutrition. We want lifetime performance, but we also want things to help with better efficiency, better for the environment, being antibiotic free, for example. Okay, just two things. So animate is a way of using nutrition to prevent disease. So animate is an anionic salt. So you feed it to cows and it causes a metabolic acidosis. And what that means is that the blood tries to make the blood acidic, but the body will try and naturally make it back to neutral. And in that process, we'll produce hormones that help release more calcium. So therefore, when a cow gives birth and produces a lot of milk, it naturally will have a lot of calcium in its blood, and therefore it won't suffer from low calcium levels. So using this product, any anionic salt, you can prevent hypocalcemia, which is a massive disease in dairy cows. So that prevents that disease, for example. Another product, Omnigen, is an immune stimulant. So feeding this product makes sure the white blood cells work better during stress. So when the animal is stressed, the white blood cells will still be working, so that when they come out of the stress, they get less disease. So that's another way of using nutritional supplements to help support the immune system. Recently, I was at a conference and they were talking about natural products. So oregano is a big talking point at the moment. So there's oregano put into waste milk, and what they find is that reduces the amount of antibiotic-resistant E. coli in the milk. So when the calves suckle it, they're less likely to get the scours and the diarrheas from this milk. So it makes the milk a lot safer. And again, it helps with the gut as well. So they were feeding essential oils to calves, and they felt that the gut microbiome was better, so calves suffered less scours and less diarrhea. So again, there's more and more work on this. The reason how it does it is not fully known, and that's where the research is going into. But oregano is an example of a natural product that actually is becoming more popular, and there's more and more evidence, observational evidence on it working well. So again, this could be the way forward of preventing disease. So I'm coming to the end. So I just want to mention a couple of things. Recently, we've seen in the news there's currently a DEFRA discussion on gene editing and whether we should be doing it in England. And again, people are pro and people are against this technology. And to be honest with me, I'm not sure. I probably don't fully understand it enough to have an opinion. So I'm still learning a lot more about it. But what it means is if we think about farming, we had wild animals and we domesticated them originally. And then once we domesticated them, we wanted them for certain characteristics. So let's say we wanted a dairy cow, so we wanted it to produce more milk. So we selectively bred it. So any cows that had produced more milk, we chose those and made sure that they bred with the bulls to produce more calves. And we selected calves like that. And sometimes we selected bigger cows, sometimes smaller cows, depending on our system. We then used genomics, where we looked at the calves and we could predict what it's going to be when it becomes older. And we're doing that more and more with hair samples, for example, and that's based on the genetic potential. So again, that cow will have a genetic potential, and as long as we feed it well and look after it well, it's going to produce more milk or grow better. And we're doing that all currently now. That's all legal, all being done. What gene editing means is it speeds up that selective breeding. So we can look at the gene, and we're not adding anything or adding anything from another animal. It's not transgenics or anything like that. We're not taking pig DNA, putting it into cows or anything like that. It's cow DNA, and it's sticking with cow DNA, or it could be corn or wheat or anything like that. But what we're doing is we're trying to take away genes that probably, animals that get a certain disease always seem to have this gene. So if we take this gene away, will animals not catch that disease? And maybe it's a way of getting rid of disease in a lot of animals or plants by cutting or editing the genes in the DNA. And this is what's being debated at the moment. So some people are pro because, again, we're not playing with different genetics, we're playing with the same genetics, but some people are against because we are manipulating it. But again, is it any different from selective breeding? I don't know. I think it's up to you to do some research, read up about it, and form your own opinion. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer with it. But they do say, it will give a competitive advantage if we did decide to do that. I think, off the top of my head, I think it is not allowed in Europe, but because of Brexit and now we can sort of decide what we do more, it might be something that we want to think about. So what is the answer for preventative strategies for animal health? I think ultimately just get the basics right. You know, we know what an animal needs, we know what it wants, just do that correctly. And the more you get the basics right, the better you're going to be helping animal health. Okay, so know what you want to achieve. And if you do make a change, let's say you change the nutrition, you use new technology, or whatever you do, be able to measure it. And I think data is important. Being able to measure something is really important, and therefore you'll be able to see if there's an improvement or there's a change, whether it could be a negative, positive, or indifferent change, and therefore you'll be able to use it. So use your eyes, think about it, and I think that's the best way to prevent any disease. And really, the simplest things are the best things. And you know, finally, that's what we did. We, you know, a couple of years ago, I was part of a project and we managed a calf rearing unit, and we had 80 calves in batches. We had lots of respiratory disease, a few deaths, but we were trying to achieve good growth rates. We were weaning these calves, so we wanted to go through the weaning period really well, and we wanted to sell bigger calves to get more of a profit. So we invested about £300 in, and we had a shed that was not purpose built. It was a cow shed, and it was the ventilation wasn't great, the floors weren't great, but what we did is we improved the enrichment. We spent £400 on better feeders and milking and water stations. We changed the management slightly. We came up with treatment protocols, and we saved between one batch and another about £2,000 within just one batch. And we did a bit of work with a few, and we were shortlisted for the Antibiotic Guardian Awards for the huge reduction in antibiotics that we made, and that was purely by looking at management routines. So it wasn't a huge amount of technology, and the only measurements we made were clinical signs and using a weight scale, and that was it. So again, it can be done, and then based and with this as a model, then what we could do is add the other technology on top of it to make things even more efficient. But then that was just a simple project, so I just wanted to mention that. So thank you very much, everyone, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Steve. That was a really interesting talk, very wide-ranging and very interesting. If you do have any questions, do feel free to put them in the Q&A box, or if you want to talk, I can allow you to talk somehow. I'll figure it out, and we can ask those questions. We've just got our first question that's come through here. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
But it says, how do you think stock person training should be managed? Should it be mandatory to complete industrial qualifications? Clearly, training people on farms can have a positive impact on animal health, but there is already an industry-wide issue with recruiting and retraining skilled livestock workers.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really, really good question, and it's definitely something being discussed. So I'm part of an ADHB think tank at the moment, and what we're looking at is thinking about qualifications or training for farm workers, because I think one thing about it is there's a safety issue, and you know, we talk about a lot about injuries, and especially agriculture, which is the highest as a sector compared to anywhere else in the UK. But also as a person, you want to develop your own skills to go up the ladder. So what their plan is to create something called a T level. And a T level, it's different from an A level. You know, you're probably aware of A levels and GCSEs and Scottish Highers, and you're all at university, so you might be studying your degrees and things like that. But a T level will be below a degree but above an A level, and the aim is to make it more skills based rather than just paper based. It's not all about knowledge; it's about what you do on farm, but it will give you that industry recognized qualification. I think that's important as well, because there's no point saying that you need to know I don't know how to you need to know all the different breeds of cows, for example, if industry doesn't care about that. But if industry wants you to understand how to do a simple basic diet for a cow or something, then I think that's useful skills for a stocks person. So at the moment there is a T level being developed, and there's going to be one in livestock, one in arable, and one in horticulture, and that's going to and at the moment there's lots of different bodies looking at how do we create that, and that's being coordinated with education as well, and that, I think that'll be the first thing out there, which will help professionalize being a farm worker.
Definitely, that sounds really interesting. I mean, there's one thing that I find mad is how many people are actually interested in farming but don't know how to get involved or how to learn about it. And I think that kind of work and that kind of project is going to be really, really important going forward.
Really good, yeah. And I think the other thing about agriculture and farming is, if you ask most people, what can you do in agriculture? Everyone just imagines you sit in a tractor, and you just think, well, no, that's one job you can do. But what about everything else? Crop scientists, soil scientists, geneticists, nutritionists, and everything else. Even if you think of a cow shed, the people who design the sheds, people who design the floors, the bedding, and so there's so much diversity in agriculture, but I don't think the agricultural sector's done a very good job in selling itself, and I think that's also something that's, along with the T levels and the training, I think the whole sector has to sell itself better and show that diversity to people to get the best talent in.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm from here in Cheshire, and we've got 200 dairy cows here, so I've got hundreds of questions that I could ask you. But just sort of a bit of a wider view, like you said at the start, that extensive versus intensive. Where do you see that going forward? Waitrose want their cows out 120 days of the year. Maybe that wouldn't be possible for the likes of Tesco, but where do you see that going forward in terms of that balance?
I think at the moment it depends. I think end of the day, it's all about the consumer. It doesn't matter what the farmer wants to do. The consumer won't buy it, then it doesn't matter. So what does a consumer want, and also what has the consumer got? Okay, so if you think about the typical Waitrose customer, money isn't an object, so they can demand, no GM, outdoors all year, fine, that sort of milk. But if you think about this country, 1/5 of people, low socioeconomic group, we've got a crisis with food. A lot of children are going hungry, and so there is a need for. I know it's not the right thing to say cheap food, but we do need cheap food at the moment. So there is a market for milk, because we still need the volume as well. And again, when we put cows outdoors on grass, it's much more nutritious milk. We know that, and it's better for the cows. But volumes aren't as high as if they're in a shed, because then we can regulate the nutrition better. So we need a balance of both at the moment, I think. And I think, and like I said, there's no ideal. So I think we're going to do a bit more of the grazing system. But I don't think that it's going to happen overnight. And even in the next 10 years, we're going to have a 50-50. You think about organic, how much organic is there? You think organic's massive, but I think in milk, organic's only 1% of the market still, and it's not grown, it's stagnated. There's an issue with the organic sector, because it's a great theory, but putting it into practice, it's quite difficult.
Definitely, and that's the thing. That's a big thing, isn't it? Making it so farmers are able to do it. That's probably a big barrier, isn't it?
Yeah. But the good thing with milk, for example, is during COVID, milk has gone up. People are drinking more tea at home, but the big growth there is cheese and processed milk, and so again. Maybe in the future we're going to be looking less at volume and more at constituents, and therefore grazing might have more of an influence. Then who knows? And that's the market. That's what the market wants.
Definitely. And I think we've got an exciting few years ahead. Definitely.
Yeah. Opportunity.
No, definitely. We're lucky to be in the position we are as Harper students. Is there any chance you wouldn't mind just quickly talking about your Nuffield Scholarship briefly? Sure. Just because I'm sort of quite interested. I'm joining McDonald's as placement in August, so it's just interesting to hear about how you work there.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll just tell a little bit how it all started, how we got into it. So I went to the Oxford Farming Conference. I was an emerging leader last year, and the theme of the conference was inclusivity and diversity in agriculture. And actually it was a really good conference, because it was, the speakers was just from all sorts of different places, lots of different backgrounds, talking a lot about different things. And I did a talk with a few other people on stage about diversity in agriculture, about diversity in people. And McDonald's were there, and what they do is they do the farming it's not the farming scholarship, it's the progressive farmers award or something like that, where they take 20 young farmers and they take them through from farming to processing. And when I was there, I thought, well, why don't McDonald's create a scholarship? Because again, why is a great opportunity to bring some 2 or 3 people from a non-farming, non-traditional background through that journey as well, and expose them to that, because I think exposure is important. And we created the Breaking Barriers Scholarship, and we got 2 people. One person was a pig farmer, and one person was a food nutritionist, and they both got a scholarship to do it, which was great, which was the first up scholarship. And I'm very passionate about encouraging people, especially from marginalised backgrounds, into agriculture. And when I talk about diversity of the roles, I think that's the issue. People don't realise there's a diversity in roles. With my Nuffield Farming Scholarship, I'm looking at promoting and supporting ethnic minorities in farming, agriculture, and the veterinary profession. Because the barriers for both veterinary, agriculture, and farming are very similar, especially people from ethnic minority backgrounds. And again, with ethnic minority backgrounds, you'll have a lot of people from inner city areas, from low socioeconomic backgrounds, from non-farming backgrounds, all those sort of things as well mixed in. And what I want to do is I want to look at what's happening in the UK. So again, what the college is doing, how are they getting students, how are they embracing students, what are the companies doing, how are they recruiting. And then what I want to do is, and then I want to look at some allied industries, construction, maybe the army, for example. And then I want to do the same thing in the US, the same thing in New Zealand, same thing in Australia. So in Australia will be the Aboriginal people and the recent Australians. In New Zealand, it will be, again, Maori people and the recent New Zealanders. And America will be Black and Hispanic people and other Americans, and looking about how do they integrate and how do they work with farming and those sort of industries, and then learn what's worked, what's not worked, and bring it back to the UK. And why McDonald's are really keen is because they've got a few streams. Sustainability is one of them. And so they've sponsored one project in sustainability. We're looking at livestock health and sustainability. And they're sponsoring my one because they're thinking about, well, how do they integrate that into McDonald's as well? Because again, McDonald's has got a lot of diversity on the shop floor, but you go to the management level and there isn't very much. So what they want to do is they want to just work on that. And again, being leaders, they want to be leaders in agriculture, so they want to take that forward. So it's been really interesting actually, because I've started to integrate DE&I a lot and I've done a lot of talks with them. So that's something that's growing. But I think as a topic, it's something that we don't in this sector. There's not a lot of information. So hopefully it's going to, my Nuffield Scholarship is going to sort of create that and create something. And Harper, I'm actually in touch with a new vet school there. And the head of your vet school is someone I'm in touch with quite often. So again, it's something that, hey, hopefully something that will be useful for Harper as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's something that, like you say, needs more work and needs more research. And I thought it was really interesting to read about that work that you're doing at the moment. But I mean, we have taken more of your time than we asked for. Right. But, it's been a really interesting talk. I haven't got any more questions coming through, so if everybody's happy to leave that there, honestly, again, thanks Steve for your time.
No problem. If anyone's watching Open Farm Sunday this Sunday, I'll be doing a section about 2:30. It's on Facebook Live. On a dairy farm in Derbyshire. So again, if you've got any questions then as well about dairy farming or anything like that, just ask on that Facebook Live. It's on leaf farming.
Okay. Oh no, that's brilliant. Well, no, thank you everybody for joining us for last Harper Forum of this term, and again a big thanks to Steve for his brilliant talk. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
And you. Bye bye.